If I think back, well, 50 years ago, right? 50 years
50?
ago?
Ain't no way.
I think so. I think, let me see your driver's license. I think it is 50 years ago. You started this story. And like 11 years ago, we started these stakeholder dinners. Remember, we started because we wanted transparency. Because you, Luana, your family owned Prime. Private companies sometimes hoard the numbers, but that's not the way you roll. You wanted to share. You wanted everybody to know where we were. Your business model has been perfect. We'll talk more about it. But you remember all that, don't you?
I just remember back maybe 25 to 30 years, which makes me much younger than you thought, than you might think. Much younger. No, 50 years, that's true. Hard to believe. Challenges, you know, we say challenge accepted, right? We're talking about COVID-19, right? One challenge I have is this quarantine 15 going to COVID-19. But, you know, let's get back a little bit to the history.
Yeah.
It's been a ride. There have been challenges all the way, you know, from, you know, sell house farm kids, selling a few cows, making down payment on a dump truck, going through the trials and tribulations of, you know, grinding on that thing and trying to make some money so I could get back in college, and, you know, all the stuff, trading it for an over-the-road truck, you know, hiring a driver, a friend of mine, high school friend of mine. I know our high school wasn't that big, so there weren't a lot of rocket scientists where I went to high school. Urbana, Missouri, population 259. You don't get a lot of geniuses coming out of there.
Yeah, but one did, and he might be he might be on the stage. But
hey, do you think your share portion is going to get amped up because you make a comment like that?
No, but
Yeah.
but I wanted to ask before you go on about the story, the hog story where you electrocuted all your hogs.
Yeah, I was a hog farmer too.
Yeah, you're diversified, didn't you?
I was a hog farmer. I worked in a clothing store. I did a lot of different stuff. None of it that successfully. Particularly the hog story is, we had these electric waters out there that I'd wired up myself. Even though I was an engineering student, I don't think these were structurally sound in their installation.
Absolutely. Right.
So I went over in the evening to do the chores, and I had a field of dead hogs out there around these waters. And so I had the presence of mind to go unhook the electricity.
It's before you got in.
And before I got in. But anyway, loaded up these dead hogs and took them to the locker plant. And we had a great locker plant there close to Urbana over in Hermitage, and had them do up these hogs. And we made, you know, a lot of hams.
I bet Vera was doing pork chops every meal.
Oh, the house smelled so good. I mean, that aroma of, you know, pork chops and cured hams. I mean, it's great. But anyway, we took them over to Fort Scott, Kansas, where you used to work.
Yeah.
And I don't think I gave you one because you weren't that important at the time.
I guess not.
But we gave them to the fleet managers. We gave them to the sales coordinators, and they loved those hams, and they gave me good loads.
I was going to say, did your turn of truck improve immensely? And
my revenue shot up 50%.
Quality of revenue sky high, right?
Yeah.
That's the way that works.
They're always yelling at me about not turning in my logs, but I got to pass on that. So
incentive-based compensation.
We just ran the paint off those white trucks, I'm telling you.
It is an interesting story, and we have so many young associates that really haven't been exposed to it. It is worth the listening to, because you did overcome some challenges. You accepted them. I mean, back in 1980, you accepted a huge challenge. I know you recall that.
Well, I did, but, you know, my challenges, you know, I think for most of us, and I'll say for me, you know, my challenges were self-made, self-induced,
Self-inflicted.
in a lot of ways. You know, we started in 70. Actually, the dump truck came a little bit before 70. We formed the corporation in 70. And for that next 10 years, you know, we ran hard. We, went back and forth to California. We generated a lot of revenue and kind of worked off the float. I don't know if you've ever written a bad check and relied on the float to get you there.
You
No?
tell me. Don't tell me you
I
did
don't.
it.
I hope I'm not admitting to any capital offenses here, but
I don't think so.
my financing abilities were kind of limited, but we grew very rapidly. I guess you could say successfully. Made $1 million in 1979. Incredible amount of money for a hog farmer from Urbana, Missouri. Let me tell you. And I thought it was pretty easy.
Yeah,
Well,
70 to 80. You was rocking and rolling, weren't
we
you?
doubled every year.
Yeah.
You can take and play it out.
Yeah.
We got to we were annualizing at over 40 million.
Yeah.
But we had too much debt.
Yeah.
We had way too much debt. We'd grown too rapidly. Rapid growth without taking care of a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Well, you don't, the business, do you have the business to grow that
Right,
rapidly? Right. So if you don't have the business, you're taking that not out of the company's bottom line, but you're taking it out of the driver's pocket, because you're taking more drivers and spreading it over the same amount of freight.
Yeah.
We
know how that works.
We know that doesn't work.
That creates driver turnover.
So I learned that lesson.
But the good news was you didn't have to run teams, because you just ran over hours constantly on solos, right?
Well, we'll say that our log department was
somewhat liberal.
It was pretty lax, and we just said run them.
I got you. Well, that was the way of the world back then. So in '79 you make $1 million, and 1980 share the rest of that.
Yeah. Well, I was smart enough to figure out that Urbana wasn't doing it. We were 50 miles off the interstate. We couldn't hire, we need some smart folks. Smart, kind of like you purport to be.
Other than our Urbana graduates.
Yeah, my high school buddies and me running this thing, it wasn't working that well. I recognize that. So we're moving to Springfield, moving to the big city of Springfield, which is the best thing I ever did. Built a new building. It cost us $2 million. So we more than spent that $1 million that we made in '79.
Yeah.
Built a new facility, cost $1 million, and my plan was to double the fleet again. So we're going from like 150 trucks to 300 trucks. Again, more debt, more growth. With that growth, you have all kinds of challenges, and moved to Springfield. So we moved down here, and within just a few months, even progressively, we were in trouble. Cash flow sucked. We were trying to load these trucks, moving into a new facility, trying to hire some good people, which we eventually did. It was much easier to do here in Springfield. But our debt, that $1 million in profit was more than exceeded by the amount that our interest expense went up.
Sure.
And I always blame our bankruptcy on increased interest expense, because it's kind to me, but really it was not only the interest expense going up, it was some of the other management decisions, and the business model that we had at the time.
Yeah.
It was nothing special. It wasn't particularly sound.
Yeah.
In fact, it was unsound.
Right.
So again, I talked about self-induced challenges and pain. I certainly created them, but by October of 1981, we were in Chapter 11.
Have a drink on that one. You need a little sip with our associates. I'm sure they're out there having a drink with us. Salud, man. So you had this idea that you're going to keep growing, and you're going to grow 300 trucks, but you really don't have that volume of business to offset those 300 trucks. Plus, now we're just a little bit tight on cash.
We are very tight. You may remember the very true story where Luana and I came to a Shriner's raffle.
Right.
A Shriner's raffle in 1980. And it's where, the moderator draws a number out of there, and they get kind of booby prizes, balloons and, stuff. But the last name drawn wins Cadillac.
It's that big old Cadillac.
There it is. That color's a little bit off. I mean, actually, that Cadillac's a little prettier than that
It
one.
was
But
deep blue,
That,
wasn't
you get the idea. It was deep blue.
Yeah, deep blue. I remember.
And I swear, if I had not won that Cadillac in 1980, I would have been walking in 81. That's how bad it was.
Yeah, I got you. Or you could have got a bicycle, I'm sure. You wouldn't be walking.
Oh.
But you know, you did understand some of the errors of your way and went about trying to correct it, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of trial and error for a while. And
yeah, but you also realized, in my opinion, that your greatest resource was going to be people. So, you know, some of the people that had been there, some of the prime associates had been there, I think you recognized maybe weren't going to get you where you wanted to be. So you went out, and I remember when I came to Springfield, and I came to your office, and we were in there smoking and doing snuff and all that stuff in your office there, talking about where we're going to go and why we're going to go there. And Carl, your dad, came in, and I hadn't met Vera, but yet I hadn't met Vera. But so we started talking about this deal, and I immediately felt like you're a hell of a sales guy, because you convinced me that you are going to do this in spite of the reality that you explained we were in.
well, I'm not sure I explained all the reality.
I think you left some out.
I think you're being pretty generous there. You know, I told you, yeah, you know, we filed this number.
Yeah.
I'm referring to chapter 11.
Yes.
It's just a number. It's like a court process. I mean, it's a reorganization.
Right.
I didn't use the word bankruptcy.
Oh, no.
I was smart enough not to do that.
Right,
So
right.
don't worry about it. We're doing fine. We're going to continue to grow. We're going to build this thing. Come on and join up with us. And then, if you recall our first sales trip when we went down to Dallas, you remember that?
Oh, absolutely. Do I remember it? How could I ever forget it? It was our first big trip.
We went up to the Hertz counter. We had that Hertz credit card.
Oh, yeah, I whipped that baby out.
And I given it to you and
said, I plopped it down there. Yeah.
And the lady grabbed it up. She went back, and at that time, she wasn't working on a computer. She was looking at a book.
Yeah, she had a
looking
big
at that
list.
book, and she paged through that. And she said, Mr. Wutke, there's a reward for this card. And she picked up the scissors and she cut it up right there in front of us.
She was so proud that she got, I think maybe she had some kind of a cash reward, again, incentive-based compensation, because she took that thing and she smiled and she just snipped it. And I look at Robert and I say, hey man, don't worry, I got a card. I think it'll be okay. So
well, that was the main reason I hired you, because you looked like you had credit, and I damn sure didn't. So
I didn't have very much. But anyway, that was kind of the beginning. And you know, I mentioned earlier, I during my first interview process, I hadn't met your mother, Vera, but certainly Vera had a huge role in, you know, the beginning, the sustainability of our company.
yeah, she was salt of the earth.
She
Just
was.
a second.
She was indeed. And not only that, she was willing to give everything that she had accumulated to you to make payroll, wasn't she?
Well, you know, we were in bankruptcy for 4.5 years. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a long time as bankruptcy goes. Usually, you know, the creditors, the bankruptcy judge, or somebody shuts you down. You know, particularly when, you know, you're marginally profitable in this industry. New equipment and the ability to borrow and finance is essential, because, you know, there ain't nothing like having a new truck.
No.
And there ain't nothing
True.
as bad as
True.
having an old truck that needs a set of tires on it.
Yeah.
When you're trying to make a living. So, you know, we were really just grinding along there. And, you know, in planning for the Chapter 11, we tried to get Vera safe, tried to get her safe. She was, you know, getting up close to 60, and, you know, she had her home paid for. So we financed that, and she got about $50,000 cash, and we said, Mom, if everything goes to hell, they crash us down, you're at least going to have $50,000 to retire on. Well, that fateful day finally happened. You know, again, you know, we're floating checks out there, trying to keep our bills paid, trying to make payroll, and finally that day came.
Yeah.
When we'd exhausted all our resources, we were completely broke, and the bank called and said, "You've got checks down here and no funds." They didn't take another check to cover checks that were coming in anymore. But they said, you know, we're gonna bounce these checks. And of course, like today, if you bounce a fuel check, you know, that's sayonara.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to pay for fuel. These truck stops have no personality or forgiveness whatsoever.
None.
So, you know, we had we have meetings now. Well, these were serious meetings.
Right.
So, myself and Fred Mertz and a couple others, Buck Bebo, I mean, these names go way back, said, you know, what are we going to do? I mean, it's done. I didn't have any money to put in. Nobody else was willing to put any money in. I don't blame them. I didn't want them to. Didn't want her to. But she insisted on putting that $50,000 in. And that $50,000 got us through that day. And then another day and another day. And a group of drivers came to me and said, look, we'll drive for free for a week. No pay for a week, just to help out.
Yeah.
Because, you know, they were aware of what's going on. And I took them up on it. I paid them back.
Yeah.
I paid her back the $50,000 eventually. But, you know, she had the faith and confidence
Sure.
in the company that we were going to make it. She was willing to risk it all. She would have been 60 years old, no job, abject poverty, and she did it.
The love of
Took
a
a lot
mother.
of courage, yeah.
The love of a mother, right? You know, I was thinking back about the first staff meeting along these lines that I went to, and of course Johnny Moore was doing the numbers, and we're in that the old boardroom, and it's kind of dark, and 7 o'clock, and you're still conducting the same kind of meetings then, and questioning what's going on, and I remember Johnny Moore, his time came, and he says, well, we really had a pretty good week. We only lost 60 grand this week. And that was my first staff meeting, and I'm thinking, wow, this is good. This is good. This is a chapter. So
yeah,
anyway,
well, and that was while we were
interesting.
in 11. I remember at first we were burning off about 100 grand a week. I mean, we were a fairly good sized
Yeah.
truck line, you know, 330 trucks, something like that at the time. And things started happening that were good things, where we gained
Yeah.
some cash. And of course, you got to have cash in bankruptcy because you can't borrow anything.
You did have a good run of luck there. A couple good things.
I wish I
occurred.
could have found a banker that was stupid enough to lend me money, but
Made life easier.
I don't think they'd be employed long.
But during this time too, you were coming to the realization that the best business model is pay for performance, whether that's your driver base or whether that's your in-house associates, right?
Absolutely, that was occurring during the pendency of the 11. You know, it was kind of like, we can't guarantee you. Like when I hired you, Steve, I can't guarantee you your big salary, big high-powered sales guy. I can't guarantee you that big salary.
Yeah.
But look,
Yeah.
if we're successful, we do well, we get this thing on its feet, we'll work out a formula to reward you proportionally.
Yeah.
And we use that example with drivers. We developed, you know, the independent contractor model. We developed an incentive program for virtually everybody in the place, so everybody was incented, and it really makes sense,
Yeah.
you know, to be like an owner, to behave like an owner, make decisions like an owner, you know, and it worked,
Yeah.
and it still works.
It works very well.
But if I hadn't gone through the bankruptcy, you know, I probably wouldn't have come up with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was really a good business model, and it still exists today with lots of improvement. I think that throughout Prime, you'll find that there's a level of respect for the individual, respect for the driver, which, you know, I think is, you know, needed in this industry. You know, drivers haven't been treated with the respect that they truly deserve because they're the lifeblood of the company. But that appreciation for people, that treating with respect, treating people the way you'd like to be treated, it works.
Yeah.
And we developed it during the pendency of the 11.
Yeah, so we became driver focused, people focused, and knew all along that we had to have a terrific service offering to take care of our customer base. If you recall, we had many of our good customers kind of hang with us through the Chapter 11, and man, it's much appreciated because we'd have been screwed without that.
You know, equipment is a big part of this, you know, not to depart too far from the people side, but I remember, you may recall those trailers we had to load everything on pallets because we needed to get more air circulation in those refrigerated trailers, and we still had some soft product claims, and it wasn't because of misset temperatures, because the units, I mean, you can throw a cat through the side door.
Yeah, kind of older.
And it's, they're older.
Yeah.
And they were pretty loosey, and you could throw a cat through the side door, and it's hard to cool one of those.
It is, but you know, we got all through that again and started upgrading equipment, and then really started trying to get focused on technology and where that was going to take us, right? And that was quite a challenge, you have to admit.
It was. I mean, you know, we were, at that time, we were making good money, and of course that really helped with the financing and the acquisition of the technology we needed. And we were starting to get some good people, and we were investing in technology, and you know, we went to Qualcomm, which was a watershed to our company, really. A technology watershed to the industry. And you know, we just kept improving on the service, the communications, you know, the features that we had to offer the shipper and the driver. We had new equipment, and really since about 86 or 87, you know, we jumped right out there and drove it down to about an 85 or 86 OR, and you know, really have continued on that path.
Yeah, and that revenue glide scope was pretty, wasn't it, during those times?
It really was, and we were talking about it yesterday. If you look at our revenue in 1970 till today, you had a little blip there in the early 80s, but you know, I think we're up like 1,000%. You know, somebody can do the math, but you know, 1,000x times revenue. You know, that's pretty impressive. When we came out, even when we came out of bankruptcy, I think we dropped back to about 22 million, and now we're at 2.2 billion. And I think that's 1,000 times too.
Yeah, that's a sweet number for sure. And there's no reason why we can't continue that growth. Would you agree?
Well, I'm depending on you to do some damn good sales work.
Well, we got a great sales team.
Or that share component for you might be somewhat squeezed down. You see what I'm saying?
I hear you.
I'm just being forthright. I mean, I'm not going to beat around the bush.
No, you always are very, very direct. You know, and there has been some challenges, and this COVID-19 thing has been, you know, a bit of a challenge. Yet, when you look at what our associates have done and what our drivers have done to accomplish and meet that challenge as it was accepted, I'll use like our logistics people as one example. You know, we've always used that logistics freight as a bit of a buffer. If things are softer, we'll move some of that freight over to our asset side, right? And while we were going through that during this downturn of freight, you know, our logistics people, they just hung in there, and they became other professionals in other areas, soliciting freight, booking freight, proing freight, tracing freight, doing all those things that keep us up there as number one performer with all of our customers. So I think that's just one example of how terrific our in-house associates have coped with this COVID-19. Now I mentioned earlier, I think, about the beginning of COVID-19, and on day 2, you send like 98% of our in-house people home to work from home, and Rodney and Brianna and their team had everybody ready to roll. That was unbelievable.
Well, it wasn't quite 98%, because you can never forget all those folks that have to be physically at prime to do their job. So our shop did a fantastic job.
Unreal.
Folks that work in the cafeteria, we had all our housekeepers in there sanitizing like crazy. So not everyone went home, but those that did, those that could work from home, we sent them home promptly. You'll remember, we just come back from London and Bermuda, over there begging those insurance companies to sell some insurance, right?
At a low rate.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was back in the old days again, but
Yeah.
we have a great story to tell on safety, and we got some insurance. We were kind of jubilant, but all this news was coming out about this coronavirus, this virus that emanated from China and was spreading around the world. We were thinking, we were looking, and we were aware, and I think we stepped up appropriately.
Yeah, and I would also say that we have had a history of accepting those challenges. I mean, just think about some of the other major crises that we've been exposed to.
Steve, the old saw about, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Yeah.
I think that's true. I mean, you go back to even to 9/11, man, business was tough. After 9/11,
Tanked.
they locked down the airports, they locked down trucking, shelter in place, and let's see what's going on. I mean, it was a scary time.
It was.
And had a tremendous impact on the trucking industry. We stepped up. Prime associates stepped up. Drivers, in-house, stepped up big time. And you move a few years forward, and we had this financial crisis. Crisis that was really, not an external thing like COVID-19, but an internal, banks, lenders, liquidity. It was a bad time. And as far as business is concerned, and you can speak to this better than me, times were tough. Business was slow.
It was tough, and I think it brought into light those relationships that we had created years and years ago, and I feel like our customer base has been supremely loyal to us. But beyond that, I just think these prime associates that are out here with us tonight, they're tough as nails. They do not shy away from a challenge. They accept it. They go about their responsibilities, continue to bring good ideas to the table, and we continue to win. It's unreal. Now, what do you think about going forward and for the remainder of this year? We got people with children. We don't know what the schools are going to do for sure. What's your thought about where we're going to go for the remainder of this year as far as working from home or on site, or what's your view?
Well, let me speak to our associates. This situation, this pandemic, is like nothing we've seen in, like, I think 100 years. Right. About 100 years ago, the Spanish flu was similar, but technology's changed and situations changed. Because of the isolation aspect of this deal, we've got to be extremely careful. We're going to be very thoughtful. We're not going to be impatient. We're going to rely on the science and the best information that we can get. Every morning, I have Luana goes in and gets up these websites, and she makes a little chart for me. How many new cases are reported? How many deaths are reported, by geographic area? So, I'm trying to stay abreast of that. I'm not Dr. Fauci. I'm just saying, I care. I care about the health and safety of every associate's loved ones, parents, children, and we're going to do everything we can to protect them. Safety is number one. We're going to run a business, and we've been running it, as you just explained, Steve, very successfully. But we're going to be cautious and careful, keeping in mind that the situation is fluid. New meds are going to come out, hopefully a vaccine before long. So we're going to be monitoring all that as we make decisions, and move forward. There are a lot of things to consider, like child care for our folks that are working in-house. It's hard to work from home when you have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old crying in the background. You're trying to take care of them. So our child care, which we're up at about 70% right now, is part of the equation. So we're going to look at our capability there. We're going to look at what the schools do. We're going to look at how the outbreak is proceeding. Hopefully we'll get to kind of a plateau. We're going to monitor the percentages of disease among the population in certain locations and tailor our recruiting efforts around what's going on with the disease around the country.
Right.
So be patient. We're going to be making decisions. We make them quickly, but make them decisively, but make them correctly. I think we've done that so far, and it's my promise to every associate that we're going to continue to do that and be very mindful of their well-being.
So safety is still our highest calling, and it's a moving target, it's safe to say. And you will modulate based off of information that's accurate and make decisions based off of that information.
Well said.